how do architects perceive the synergy between sustainable construction and design aesthetics with innovative approaches that can be employed to ensure the visually compelling structures and simultaneously meet the environmental standards? Shruti ma'am, shall we start with your inputs?
As our target today says, is to basically understand what the sustenance is, right? The verdict which I actually presume is, while we try to talk so much of technological content, and I believe everyone present out here, we know a lot of things technically, that what could be done and what do we actually propose to the audiences, right? But before which, my perspective of looking at it is a bit at a different corner angle, that the audience are quite educated already. And in fact, we as maybe panelists or those delegates who are participating, everybody is quite ahead of the awareness factor already, right? Still, why we have to force so much of input, updations, data, and entries into the environment is, I believe, where we lack is that the end user is not convinced with the idea of this sustenance in building construction. The ground reality is, when we are talking big things and the user, who's the customer, he believes, what do I get out of it as liquid money? Right? I believe the point discussion has to be actually very strongly be starting with convincing the end product, yes, this is going to be of use to you. That is where I start my discussion, and normally the philosophy, even to talk with the client while we are starting up to take up things in a sustainable manner.
Totally agree with your inputs. Akbarji, if you could share your inputs.
Something which is very common for IMK architects. What we do is we do designs which are, we go back to the basics very easily, as and these are the some of the basic things which we follow rigorously and in every project, wherein we look into simple things like north light in all the main areas, habitual areas, uh, uh, east-west oriented buildings, reducing building heat as much as possible, look into the sun, look into the area, look into the terrain. Uh, while we try most of the sustainable materials, we are sometimes successful, sometimes not successful. I think Shiti madam made a very good point on how do we enlighten or how do we educate our clients, how do we bring in that vision of making the buildings more sustainable. We are in early steps of that, but what I would say is something like biophilia. These are certain things that we always use. It's still early days. We are still working on how to make the clients aware, how to make buildings more sustainable, how to make building net zero is something which we really aspire to do. Which, quite honestly, we are. I think it's still early days. We still need to work a lot towards that to make net zero buildings a very common feature across. Like we are talking, we have net zero building across, like let's say I could say 10 buildings in Bangalore or something like that. But we need to say that we have 3 net zero buildings in this street, even more. We have everything as net zero. We should go towards that. So for that to happen, we need to work a lot more.
Anika ji, can we have your views?
As much as there is awareness, I think there are a lot of other factors that are linked to it. So even if people are aware, they automatically assume that it's more expensive, or they assume that they won't get innovation in aesthetics. So I think as architects, it's our responsibility to educate the client of the commercials, the benefits, even though the general awareness is there. I think, and for us to lay emphasis on how they will benefit in the long run from all of it. So and most importantly, a lot of times they feel like it might not be linked with the aesthetics, or it might not be, it might be too expensive. So make sure all those questions are answered. Give them innovative ideas where they don't feel like they're compromising. Give them solutions that are not necessarily always very expensive. So I think that's the direction we like to approach. And also, I think this also depends from project to project, or at least the typology, because I think in commercial buildings, people are still more open to a projection of sustainability. So I think it has to be more across different typologies. That's my thought on this.
Yes, very well said. Omji, can we have your inputs?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all the previous panelists on this issue, but there is general awareness required as far as sustainability is concerned. Either we educate our clients or we educate, our developers or the government, etc., about sustenance. Right? Sustenance does not necessarily mean that it is going to be expensive. Right? It is not always that. Right? There is a palette of materials that one can use. There is a palette of systems that one can use. Right? We generally, as a society, are looking at object based or inspirational based paradigm where we or the clients, as architects also, we get inspired. As clients also, they kind of do a lot of this insta studies and all that, and their dream is always a photograph, right? We lack originality. When we look at inspirations and directly jump and sculpt that or recreate that, it might have been done for a different reason, but we then really, because we have seen it, we believe it and we want that, right? That approach of originality, the approach towards exploration generally is missing right nowadays. In a society, we find that people have no time to dream or no time to think rationally. They just limit themselves to pictures, limit themselves to what's happening abroad, limit themselves to somebody's neighbor having built something. They want things exactly like that. And this entire sustainability thing is about choosing relevant and rational material and try to create. This is something that needs to be done, and people need to understand that architects will help them create that. They will create something different which they've not seen, but definitely in the due course of time, when people tell them, okay, you've made a really wonderful creation, be it a house or be it an office building, right? It definitely will get a sense of pride in having something different, having something original, and having something which is much more meaningful.
Correct, correct. We totally agree with you. Moving on to my next question to Shiti ma'am. Ma'am, can you provide insights on your philosophical approach to sustainable architecture? And how would you define and prioritize the principles that guide your practices? And do you really think it is essential for the current architectural landscape?
Yes, definitely. And I would rather like to emphasize here that I was pretty happy with to see that I think people of the community are facing, yes, definitely the same upfront thought process. Everybody just wants actually an architect to do what they want from their perspective and justify it to be right. Right? They know what they have to get copied or reproduced, and they want you as a technical eye or a technical mind to justify to the entire social strata that yes, I have asked someone professional to do this and this is right. Right? On the contrary, something goes wrong. The other point is, maybe my expert suggested it, but I rectified it. So it's basically very nicely said that we are actually towards a technically approved imitation process. That is what we want to be done to the client. Now, which is why even during my presentation, what I have highlighted is that the major effort or the fight is actually not to get updated. We do that job definitely. We read, we get ourselves educated. But more than that is, we actually have to decide that do we really feel successful to educate where we have to reproduce what we learned. That is the string which is not existing in our strata. The problem is Me, you, people here who are listening, they very well, I believe, know what is the fact and need of this discussion, right? But the point where the bridge is even not worked is made by the government versus the mob, because you are ultimately dealing the community and the social habitat. Okay. Point number one, I feel that common upfront is everybody just feels ये जो सस्टेनेबल आर्किटेक्चर एनर्जी सेविंग फीचर्स हैं इनका मैसिव मैसेजेस विद बिग बिल्डिंग्स और कैंपसेस वी आर नॉट अ पार्ट एंड पार्सल ऑफ दैट if I have a small area I am actually not supposed to be working on these aspects, right? Second is I truly believe that while the approach of a client comes to you, he has already decided what is expensive for me, which is not working for me, and something which is working for me, I have already decided. Cost, limitations, workability, and even the skill which is going to be around me. You may suggest something which would be probably too good, but you will actually be failing to convince that it is good for you for years. Everything has to be very short. Prove it to me what you are suggesting. It has to help me out immediately in terms of liquid money. Where am I saving it? So I really feel that it's actually not the idea of doing just sustainable techniques or architecture, material usage techniques. You ask of a technology and you will find numerous vendors who will come educate to you. They will negotiate with you and they will do half of the science for you. But the problem is that are we able to do that before we have to step into the project with the client? Is he convinced that what we are going to propose to him, is it going to help him? That is where I feel when we sit with the client, we have to be very clear to first make them understand. You have to believe the person who is actually providing you your theme, concept, house, project, or whatever may be the scale of the design. We have to actually work upon the entire background first, and then the field is set for us to be talking on this, that how do we help the society with a sustainable construction.
Correct, ma'am. We agree. Now that you have highlighted the front desk problem that you all faced, convincing the client, I feel that, it is very, no matter how many technologies or advancements we come up with, but convincing clients is a difficult task.
I
Totally
feel
agree.
a bridge has to be there, maybe via people like you who are actually talking between us. The bridge has to widen.
Correct, correct. Totally agreed with you, ma'am. Moving on to my next question to Anika, ma'am. Ma'am, considering your expertise, how do you integrate cutting edge technologies to enhance the eco-friendliness of the construction material? And are there any special technological advancements that you believe in will reshape the landscape of sustainable construction?
So definitely there are lots of eco-friendly materials out there. So I think what I feel in general, how sustainability has to be approached in terms of whether it is material or technology. The first thing is about making sure that you are constantly in touch with what is new, what is upcoming, that awareness between the material, the technology, what is coming up has to always be there. Then the other aspect is that as awareness of wanting to approach sustainability or use eco-friendly materials or use technology in the correct way, your team always has to be engaged with it. Like it should almost be like part of your ecosystem, because if you try and do it in isolation it becomes quite difficult. The third thing is always to when you know of the new materials, the new technology, then I always feel like it has to be a holistic approach, and that is something we are not really doing it. We lack in that part. I think we tend to pick up things individually and treat them as sustainable. So that is something over a period of time has to grow into that. The third thing is, like I said in the beginning, when you have a eco-friendly material, I think people have this mindset that eco-friendly means it's not going to be aesthetically as pleasing, or it won't be so luxury or whatever. So to make sure that how we can innovatively use it in design to convince the person that it's not necessarily always about that the material is eco-friendly, so it can't become aesthetically interesting. So that is one aspect. I think we are always trying to do something innovative in terms of using the material in a more interesting way. And also in terms of technology, I think the idea is always to integrate ways by which you can either reduce energy consumption or reduce water consumption, or try to use technology to kind of overall reduce the impact on the building. So I think most of the times our approach is linked to all of these factors.
Right, right. Agreed.
Yeah.
Moving on to Akbarji, now that Anika ma'am has very well explained the part of technology and how choosing building materials and maintaining aesthetics at the same time is kind of difficult. How can you elaborate on some of the innovative designs or strategies that you employ while integrating sustainability as well as balancing the aesthetics and functionality in your projects?
I think for us, what we do is we rely on a lot of biophilia and how we make the buildings. When we concentrate a lot on the greenery and the kind of landscape, the flora, fauna, we concentrate. There's a part of we have a landscape team as well who concentrates really like it's something like we both work together towards a building that usually takes care of the aesthetic part. And at the same time, like I told you, the simple things which we really follow, those really help us. When it comes to aesthetic, we believe it's something which is not like, it's something striking. It's something which needs to age well, is other constraints, something which really looks simple and energy in terms of the energy and all those the sustainability aspects that we talk about, that's built in terms of how we talk about water consumption, in terms of how we talk about energy consumption. Like I told you, all usually what we design are east-west oriented. So usually we give bigger windows towards north and all. So these are all some of the basic principles of our office where we really follow it like a Bible, like religiously follow it.
Moving on to OMG, as manufacturing methods evolved, what according to you, what kind of skills and trainings you believe that architects and professionals should adapt to and prioritize for the future of sustainable buildings?
Well, as far as design for manufacturing is concerned, it is no real rocket science. It is a new paradigm that has been evolving. As such, we just need passionate people to try and introduce this in society well. That is the first step, where this technology has to be introduced, and people have to and try to persuade people to kind of adopt it as a technology that is the call of the hour, right? In terms of various processes that is involved in manufacturing, things like less wastage is concerned, sterile working conditions are concerned, right? Definite engineering is concerned, right? And so there is as such no such education that is important. It's just that one has to have a entrepreneurial kind of aptitude, or attitude towards doing something different, doing something new, and try and show the people that even this can mean a good sustainable building or a good building practice per se. So as such, I don't see there is some real education required. It's just that the people who are investing in the project, all the stakeholders, they really need to kind of understand, open their eyes, and adopt it within their framework of practice, their framework of business is concerned. So one really has to look at it as the future. One has to look at it as something which will help them save money, be more profitable, be faster, and things like that. So it is something that the entire industry has to look at it, right from the people who are all the stakeholders, the investors, be it the developers, be it the fraternity of architects, be it the students, right? All of them have to really get aware of this and try and work towards it and explore this particular aspect of construction.
Thank you, Mr. Merchant, for sharing your inputs. Uttamji, my next question to you. In your observation of market trends in regards to the building materials, how have you seen the adoption of gypsum plasters for sustainable construction? And what kind of evolution and notable shifts have you observed in this construction industry?
I have been associated with a company called Jipmart, India Private Limited, for the last 3 months. And this company is basically, it's a startup company in Calcutta who have opened a factory in a place called Ranihati in West Bengal only, and where they are manufacturing gypsum plaster boards and gypsum plaster. Now, coming to this gypsum plaster, let me be very clear with you that gypsum plaster is not a new subject. It is a subject which has been there since ages. Even in pyramids, gypsum plaster was used. Now, what is happening is this that sand and cement people are using it. Most of the developers in my part of the region, they use sand and cement. And using sand and cement means you are increasing the carbon footprints. You are taking 20 to 21 days for the curing. Whereas this kind of a gypsum plaster, which is being used, which is now recommended by most of the architects, is very fast. It's not time consuming, in fact, and it can be done within a day. So you can cover an entire room of a plaster within a day. 10 feet by 12 feet room you can cover within a day. And this trend is evolving. There has been builders who has in Hyderabad, say Mumbai, in Maharashtra, in Karnataka, there's a trend of using gypsum plaster for internal walls. Whereas in this part of the region where I stay, that is the eastern part, here the trend is very slow. Still, there are many developers, there are many builders who are preferring to use sand cement instead of gypsum plaster. So now, like more of the education is required. Means you need to have a builders meet, you need to have a technical meet with the installers who would be understanding this subject, and then this is how the market is growing. There is a huge potential in the market for this kind of products, which is a eco-friendly product. It is having a fire retardant property, it is humidity resistant, it has a very good acoustical properties. So this is a wonderful material.
Thank you for your views, Uttamji. Coming back to Shiti ma'am, the concept of regenerative design is gaining traction now. So, how do you incorporate regenerative principles into building projects and aiming not only for sustainability, but equally contributing for environmental restoration and enhancement?
Very rightly said. I would definitely suggest here, and that is what we've been doing quite frequently for last few years, I would say. It's basically not regenerating the entire thing. Basically, we say that there is a very thin line of difference between sustenance and resilience, right? Now, it has already been said as well that even while firstly doing the sustenance, prime conductors, that one, it is not aesthetically so promoted. Second, it may be cheap, but the fact is actually mirror of this. What we believe is that rather at times the sustainable existence becomes initially a bit costlier, and that also is one of the reason where the client is not convinced with the idea that why do I spend something more on the content, because it is going to be sustainable. Second, why am I responsible to regenerate the content? It may be excavation, it may be dumping the scrap, it may be something which is actually not always on the construction side, but very frankly, we have to put our feet into the shoes of from the pre-construction stage to the post-construction stage. Then we can capture and we can encapsulate sustenance and actually regenerate. Our philosophy commonly here from the user point of view is we rarely pre-plan or post-plan. Our job is on site, finish the site. That is what is expected. But actually, the job starts pretty early. Do we know with the client to be knowing his responsibility that before starting or before executing, you have to actually think about things before the construction, even before the planning. All these technical inputs, solar energies, wind energies, eco-friendly materials, renewable resources, these are too good to hear and theoretically to be applied. But the practical fact is that while we are sitting to plan with the client at one corner, these teamworks have to be incorporated when we are planning it just on the paper. Once we do that, we have actually regenerated the model because we are very planned from the pre to post stage. And if you're able to do that successfully, believe me, construction is a very small part of it, which we have to decide, and we have to enable our client to decide that I'm going to be a responsible client, not just a customer.
Thank you for sharing your views, huh? OMG, my next question to you. When it comes to prefab and modular construction methods, in your opinion, how do you leverage these approaches in manufacturing buildings? And what kind of benefits do you find in terms of speed and cost effectiveness and design flexibility?
Well, when you talk about modular, standardized kind of buildings, it basically means that there is much more intense design going into it, right? One has to really think about all the use situations which will arrive in the lifetime of the building, right? By lifetime, even post life and demolition and stuff like that. One has to preempt all the possible things, right? From all the services, right? Because once it is made, right, it is done, right? And it is very difficult to rather kind of tweak it or apply any jugaad over it, right? It's like it's like buying a car, right? Car goes through a manufacturing process, it goes through assembly line. It's the intensity of work which really takes all the testing that has to happen. Maybe it could be the clay module, maybe it could be road tests, all these things. So all these things need to happen, and all these basically fall under the realm of design as far as manufacturing of buildings is concerned. So one has to really test it out, make prototypes, and really test it from all the climatical, and other issues that the building might face in the future. So the design process is very intense. One has to have a very wide vision about things, choose the correct materials, right? Have a knowledge about all the technologies and systems that are there, and under one roof, kind of wrap it up into something which becomes a product, as a part of a building, or the entire building is concerned. So yeah, this is basically what it is as far as manufacturing of buildings are concerned.
Thank you for enlightening us with your views, Omji. My next question to Anika ma'am. As an architect embraces sustainability, so how do you see the need to balance the innovations with the challenges? And what approach do you implement when it comes to sustainable principles?
So, like I said before, sustainability cannot be like everybody else is also mentioning pretty much the same thing, that it cannot be in isolation, even though at the moment, whatever we are, I mean, at the moment we are doing things in isolation. But I think the whole point of sustainability, eventually in the long run, as we all are talking about it, and we hope there'll be more awareness, is to look at the bigger picture of sustainability, where it is from pre to post, right? So I think what I feel like the balance is only going to be achieved as we foster cultures within our teams to talk about sustainability right from the beginning, whether it's about collaborating with the right people to gain more knowledge about these topics, whether it's about talking to the client and making them more aware, or even educating them that it is not like we were discussing that only in commercial buildings. And in commercial buildings, I feel a lot of people still feel that it brings them value through marketing or projection or whatever it is, but in smaller projects it is still quite difficult to achieve that level of conversation. So these things definitely help. Collaboration will definitely help. Of course, the older systems of context, orientation, however much we progress, those things are not going to change. Those things will always be the starting point of any project, to make sure that they are planned as for the right context, for the natural light, for the for ventilation. All of those early things that we learn in college or in school, they will remain true even for sustainability now or whenever. So I think those things we are always making sure are creating the right balance for sustainability. So I think that's our approach towards sustainability. And of course, smart technologies, how we can use them with every project is equally important.
Totally agreed. No matter how many tech,
Yeah.
advancements or cutting edge technologies come and go, but convincing your client that why should we go for a sustainable construction, convincing them is the task here.